we're going to start it there. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Predators of Sweden. I am Andrew, as I said, White Wolf. Pick the right side. This is us. So, we're going to start off today with some stories and some education around the importance of predators. Now, predators are organisms or animals, in this circumstance, in the environment that eat other animals. Why is this important? Obviously, everyone knows we have predators. Everyone knows we have meat-eating animals. I put up here 4 points that you should hopefully be able to see nice and clearly about what predators do in the environment. So first of all, they bring balance to the nature. If we only had herbivores, the animals that eat vegetation, who eat plants and trees and grass, we would very quickly run out of plants and trees and grass. There would be nothing left. So to have carnivores, to have predators, is to control those populations. Now, it's quite important to say at this point, predators don't control significantly on prey numbers. Prey control predator numbers, but what the predators do is, if we skip to point 2, is create something called a landscape of fear. Now, this landscape of fear changes how herbivores and their prey items react. You wouldn't want to, if you knew something was chasing you, to back yourself up against a rock wall where you have no means of escape, or to put yourself by a river where, again, you have no means of escape. So the presence of predators has the function of dictating where the herbivores and the prey species go. Now, they also move around the environment because all of these animals, they're mobile, they're running around, they're active. So it means that one area can be eaten. The trees and the grass in the area can be eaten by herbivores, but the predators come along and the herbivores move, and that area then regrows. So this is a very important element of the landscape of fear, and why we have predators in our ecosystems. The third point may not be so obvious. A quote from Qui-Gon Jinn from The Phantom Menace, "There's always a bigger fish." Well, it's true. Predators don't just affect and have an effect on herbivores or their prey species. They have an effect on each other. If there are two predators in the same environment, there is likely to be conflict between them. They're going to be competing for food. They're going to be competing for space. If they're both male, they might be competing for females. They might be competing for mates. So this landscape of fear actually spreads across the entire ecosystem, from the herbivores up to the predators. They have an effect on each other, and basically there is a balance. It always comes back to this balance. The fourth point we have here, a key evolutionary theory, the arms race theory, shown most popularly in the literature between a parasite and the parasite's prey, the host of the parasite. But imagine, if you will, the rabbit and the fox. Well, first we had the fox, and the fox was very fast, and the rabbit was running around, but it was never fast enough to outrun the fox. So the slower rabbits got eaten, and the faster rabbits survived, which now means all the rabbits were faster. So suddenly the rabbit is now faster than the fox. Well, the fox thinks, well, this isn't good. So the slow foxes, they don't get enough to eat, and the fast foxes survive. So at this point, we've now seen a change in the adaptations of both species. It's an evolutionary arms race. So the predators drive the prey to adapt, the prey drive the predators to adapt, and we end up in this ever-evolving, ever-changing balance in our ecosystem, how everything's moving. But that's kind of the schoolwork for tonight. Shall we meet the players of this little evolutionary arms race that we're involved in? Now, as I said, this is all about Sweden, so we're going to start with the biggest. We have the biggest animal in Sweden, the brown bear, Ursus arctos. The names in italic are the scientific name, the binomial nomenclature for these species. The bear is of the family Ursidae. This is a family of all the bears. It's quite funny if we could look at the binomial nomenclature very quickly. Both the word Ursus and arctos mean the word bear in different base languages. One is Latin and I believe the other is Greek. So the brown bear is simply known as bear bear. Beautiful, amazing. And you see this image we have here of the mother and her two cubs. Beautiful animals, and you can see they're in this nice scrubland. There's a few trees behind, grassland with some flowers. They like the mountains, they like the meadows, and they like the forests. They are a crepuscular animal. So obviously this time of year, in the winter, they are hibernating. We haven't seen any bears in Sweden since October. I think it was October was the last recorded bear sighting in Sweden, not including hibernation sites. They're crepuscular, which means they are active at dawn and dusk. But they can also be active during the day, in the height of the berry season. The first time, and the only time so far, I've ever seen a bear, I was in Jämtland on West Sweden. We were up in the mountains, and there was this nice glade, a nice open area with lots of berries. And this bear just came walking through. You know, it was some kilometre away from us at the time. We had very powerful telescopes. Eating the berries. Which leads us on to the fact they are omnivorous. They eat everything. They eat a mix of meat and vegetables. So they have a healthy diet. This is quite, and it is said that the non-meat elements, the vegetation elements, can make up to 90% of their diet in the late summer, early autumn, when the berries are out. But they have been known, and they eat and scavenge on meat that they find. So if a wolf or another animal kills a moose, they will, of course, eat the moose. But they have also been known to kill moose calves, the baby moose. Now, how big is a bear? I said it's the biggest animal we have in Sweden. You'll have to excuse the hunter-like look. I have stood next to this bear. This is one of the bears that we have here at Biotopia on a display. So, as you can see, it's not a small animal. It is standing up to my waist. And the first fact we have here is 135 centimeters to the shoulder, up to 280 meters standing. Now, I'm 180 centimeters, so it's me plus 1 meter. Now, of course, I'm sat down right now, but you know how much 180 is. It's almost 6 foot. It's that plus a meter. So it's pretty big. Pretty bear, pretty big. Big bear. This bear, though, is a small female. We think female. It's definitely a small bear. She's actually stood on chairs, so she's not quite that high. She's probably to the bottom of my pocket when she was on the floor. But here we have sort of how much they weigh, so an average range. And of course, adult range varies throughout the year with all animals. They hibernate, so they have to build up a very high fat store in the late autumn before they go to sleep. So these weights vary. And also depending on where in Sweden we are. But we'll have a look at that a little bit more later. But you can see there's a little bit of overlap in the size, but the males can reach up to 300 kilograms. For reference, I'm about 75, 76 kilograms. So, 6 foot male, 75 kilograms. This thing's bigger than me in every direction. But they look so cute and fluffy. Now we are going to talk about bear cubs. Yes, here we are. I'm going to first share a fun fact and a story about the bear cubs, just whilst you admire such a beautiful image. The teddy bear, which so many children love and enjoy, was actually named by Morris Mitchum and Richard Steiff after Theodore Roosevelt, the American president. And he was asked if he would be named, if he would use his name could be used, my apologies, for this animal. And we all know the teddy bear today. It looks exactly like these cute little fluffy things. So that is where the name teddy bear came from. It is of Theodore Roosevelt. So, bear babies or bear cubs, they are indeed cubs. There are 1 to 3 cubs born to a female. They are born altricial. Now, altricial is a word that's going to be coming up a fair bit today. Altricial means that they finish development after birth. So they're born blind, they're born mostly furless, and with eyes closed, furless, teeth not erupted. They are not in any way, shape or form ready to survive on their own. Altricial means that they develop after birth. It's the easy way to remember it. Altricial, after birth. And they start off very small. Now, considering a female can get up to 200 kilograms, and she has 1 to 3 of these cubs, and they get up to half a kilogram, they do not make up a massive amount of her body mass when she is heavily pregnant. But they give birth in the spring in hibernation den. So when the female is asleep in the den, she will wake up and she will give birth to these little tiny 500-gram cubs, and they will start suckling on her milk then. They then sort of wake up and come out of the den sort of later into the spring, and the female will go back into mating in May, but she'll only do this every 3 to 5 years. So the female will mate every 3 to 5 years. She'll have the cubs in the den. She'll then emerge with the cubs, and the cubs will stay with the mother for 1 to 2 years in Sweden. In America, where there's a lot of bear research, the bears tend to stay with the mother until she next breeds, so that 3 to 5 years. The bear also has the biggest brain to body mass ratio of any mammal in Sweden. I think in Europe as well. And this is because the cubs don't have any natural instinct of how to survive. The only way they survive is by learning everything. They go out and they copy their mother, they follow the mother, and they learn what she does by observation. They have no natural skill, nothing inherent. So that is our bear. That is the first of our species of today. The second is the lynx, whose scientific name is Lynx lynx. It's a feline, it's a cat, but it's a little bit bigger than your domestic moggy. They are a forest specialist. They are very good climbers. You see, they've got, you can't see it so well in this picture, but they have really long back legs and slightly shorter front legs, and they're really powerful. Extremely powerful legs for pouncing and ambushing. And they are the biggest cat species in Europe. Obviously, we know of the big cats in Africa, but these are the biggest in Europe. We put some more fun facts up here. They're a similar size to a Labrador dog. So they're slightly taller than a Labrador. A Labrador is about 50 centimeters in the shoulder. These are 60 to 75, but they're lighter. The Labrador is 25 to 35. The males of this species will get to 21 kilograms. So imagine a skinny, tall version of a Labrador, and you're pretty close on your size. This photo is from a feline conservation center called NOAA. So obviously, in some cases, animals are in captivity for health and to get better as they can go back out into the wild. I've put up here the first 2 points, padded feet. Now, I'm going to quickly switch back to the other view and see how well I can show you this. We have, it's a little bit morbid, I know, we have a lynx foot here. And in terms of, maybe I have to stand a little bit closer to the camera. Oh, huzzah. Right, one lynx foot, one Andrew hand. So, considering it's an animal the size of a Labrador, that's a pretty big paw for the lynx. And they have really sharp claws, and you can basically see there's no pads. If I have to kind of dig in here to get into the fluffiness of the pads, because they have all this hair coming up between their pads, and this means when they stand on the snow, they don't fall. So, padded paws, padded feet, that's what we have. And this lynx paw would have been a winter lynx. Why do I specify a winter lynx? Well, they have a changing coat. In the summer, they're a kind of orangey, reddish tan kind of color, but in the winter, they become, and in the photo on the presentation, you'll see that the lynx is quite thin and not so fluffy. That is a summer lynx. The winter lynx is much fluffier. It looks kind of barrel-shaped and round, and it's big and fluffy and silvery. Now, I'm going to put up a slide now about lynx cubs, which contains an answer to a poll. So I probably should have asked the poll sooner about the mass of lynx cubs. Lynx kittens, because it is a cat. So I'm just going to give Danny a few seconds to launch that poll and a few seconds for you guys to answer. I'm not going to give you the full 2 minutes. Of course. But I'll tell you some of the information that's on the next slide. The lynx kitten is a I'm not going to say how big it is because that would ruin the question that I'm about to ask you. There are normally 2 lynx cubs per female. As we saw in the previous photo, this is a female with 2 cubs. Female with 2 cubs, kittens, which is the common number of kittens that they have. And they're born in a den, so the female will kind of get down into a rocky outcrop, a small cave, or under tree roots somewhere safe and concealed and out of the way. And again, the lynx kitten is born. There we go. We have the poll coming up. I do need to get closer to that camera, but that's okay. We've got some answers coming in. Good, I can see the bar changing. So yeah, I'm going to give you, half the time to answer this question. The lynx kittens are born again altricial, so they're born with fur, but they are born with their eyes closed and their teeth not erupted. And they're born and they're almost completely silver when they're born, or completely grey. Very cute, very adorable, and I'm not going to say how tiny they are, but let's say you've got 10 more seconds to answer the poll, and then I'm going to switch slide and give you the answer. We're working on this, guys. We're working it through. We're getting smooth. We'll get there. All right, that's your 10 seconds. The answer for anyone was 2 to 400 grams. So I gave you the answers of less than 100, 2 to 400, and 400 to 600. They are indeed 200 to 400. Specifically, 240 to 430 is what I found in the scientific literature. Born with completely grey fur. Now, about the lynx breeding. The breeding period is in the spring, January through to April, so about now. For those of us who have been out lynx tracking in Sweden, now is the time when they are most active and the males are kind of out on the hunt looking for females. The female, though, is in estrus for 4 to 7 days in that 3-month period. So it's a very short window. So if any of you have ever heard, or you can look it up on YouTube later, lynx screaming. And they do make a lot of noise. It is rather a banshee-like scream. The gestation period is 67 to 74 days in the scientific literature, and the kittens take about 3 months to be weaned off of mum. But again, they stay with mum until the next breeding season. And for the lynx, they breed every year, unlike the bear, who was every 3 to 5 years. And the sexual maturity for the female lynx kittens is 2 years, and for males is 1.5 years. So there is a time difference often in lynx and in male and female offspring when they reach sexual maturity. But that is our lynx. We're now going to skip forward to probably one of everyone's favorite, and certainly when I talk to people, the one that they're almost excited to go and find and look for, the wolf, Canis lupus. So, beautiful animal. Related to the ancestor of our domestic dogs. The wolf likes dense forest. It's a nocturnal animal and it's a pack animal, which means there's a lot of them in one area, but they're damn impossible to see. They're in dense dark forest, you can't see them, they're super fast, and they come out at night. So for anyone who's looking for wolves, I wish you luck. I've not yet seen one. But they are a pack hunter, which means they can take down larger prey. They can take down things like moose, they are the only predator in Sweden who will take down an adult moose itself. Bears will take down the calves. Wolverines will take down the calf if it finds it, but normally it just scavenged. The wolf is the only predator of moose in the country. But they also take everything else. So I've been wolf tracking, and we've found fox fur, we found badger teeth, we find all sorts of stuff in the remains, in the scats, in the poo that the wolf leaves. But how big are they? So I'm sorry I couldn't find a better picture, and I couldn't get access to the wolf at Biotopia because it's on display currently. It's a pretty big dog. Yeah, so next to this man is basically up to his belt at the shoulders. And you have the information on the page, but yeah, 80 to 90 centimeters at the shoulder. That's about belt height. And 40 to 50 kilograms, depending if you're female or male. The male's being slightly larger. It's a big animal. And they've got really big paws. So I didn't point this out earlier. We have, if I may, Danny, we have in front of you a wolf paw. And then we also have a wolf paw. There we go. We're just going to do this like that. Yeah. Camera technology. So this is a wolf paw, an actual size wolf paw. And this is what the wolf paw looks like. So it's a really big dog paw. 9 to 12 centimeters is the size we're looking at when we're looking for wolf paws. But they are almost impossible to tell apart from dogs when you're out tracking. You have to follow the tracks for quite some time to kind of get a story behind it. You know, find some scat, find a kill site, find a sleeping site. That's the only way to tell. So, big dogs, big boys. Obviously, within wolves, everyone knows that we have the alpha pair, the male and the female, who are the leaders of the pack, the breeders. And they will have additional pack family members. Often they are genetic family members. Tends to be young female wolves who stay with the mother and the alpha pair for a bit longer, and the males tend to disperse first. If you look at this particular image on your screen now, you'll see that the wolf has bright yellow eyes. This is really good for seeing in the dark. The bright yellow eyes are really good for seeing at night. But the pups you see on the right side are born with blue eyes. Very adorable. And they're also very small. So the wolf, as we said earlier, reaching up to 50 kilograms or 40 kilograms for the female, 10 cubs at 400 grams. She's pretty heavy when she's about to burst. But that's our wolf. We're now going to go to a slightly even more difficult to see species. The Wolverine, the first mustelid which will be mentioned. Now this animal, I have had the pleasure of seeing a Wolverine. I was up on the mountains, their preferred habitat, up on Fjällen, in the north of Sweden, and I was out watching for Arctic foxes, which will be the topic for the second part of the presentation. It's not that big an animal, so this one we do have at Biotopia. This is not live, because I wouldn't want to cuddle a live Wolverine. But this is sort of the size of them. So you see, I'm holding it on my belt line on the right-hand image, and it comes up to just under my arm. Not a very big animal, but again, massive paws. I don't have one with me, but I would say it's comparable to the palm of my hand. For an animal that size, very proportionally large. This is because they live in the mountains, and they are active hunters and scavengers. They need to move around on the snow very fast. Big paw, relatively small body mass, 15 kilograms on the big males. They can move very fast. They don't tend to sink through the snow. They have inbuilt snowshoes. Evolutionarily genius. And it is the biggest terrestrial mustelid. We specify terrestrial because the giant river otter in South American continent and the sea otter, the giant river otter is bigger, and it was also a mustelid, but this is the largest terrestrial mustelid, certainly in Europe. The cubs are born white, blind, with their teeth not erupted, and they are adorable. They look like little tiny baby polar bears. And there was a time when the badger, who is a mustelid, was thought of as the bear family, and the bear was then thought of as the mustelid family, and then it got split. So the bear is Ursidae, the Wolverine and the badger are Mustelidae. But they look like little polar bears, so I can understand it. Breeding is in the summer. The birth is in the spring, but it's not that long a gestation period. The female can actually delay implantation of the embryo, and she just kind of holds it in her and doesn't let it start to grow until into the winter time, and she decides if there's enough food. And if there's not enough food, she just reabsorbs the embryo, and that's it. But they'll breed every year, and the father will actually be involved. So the father has territories, and they live in territories. It's a big area. Sorry, the male has territories, a big area, that would normally overlap 2 or 3 females. And he will breed with each of them, and then he'll visit each of them. Whilst the cubs are being weaned at 10 weeks old, but also again at 6 months. So he's there when, obviously, for the conception. He's there when they're weaned and sort of coming out of the den. And he's there again 6 months later. And some of them choose to travel with the father. And at which point some stay with the mother, some stay with the father, and some disperse. So it's quite an interesting dynamic. Normally we don't see much in the way of male contribution to parental care in predators. Yeah, certainly not in the ones in Sweden. And they're, 15 kilogram male, 12 kilogram female, 84 gram cub. Fairly small little things, but very adorable. And they grow up so quickly. So the image on the left is at 2 weeks old. The image on the right is at 6 weeks old, if I remember correctly. But we're now going to run towards the end of this first section, and we're going to have some honorable mentions, other predators we find here in Sweden. So we have first on the left, you have your pine marten, then we have the badger, the red fox, and the otter. These are honorable mentions because they are wonderful animals. They are what we call Miso Predators. So we have apex predators, which is who we've looked at so far, the wolf, the bear, the lynx, and the Wolverine. These are Miso Predators, so they're the next step down in the food chain. These guys will be eaten by the others, but they also eat smaller things. It's a chain. It's a very complicated net. I do want to quickly touch on the status of these animals in the entirety of Sweden, over the area of Sweden. So here you can see sort of roughly where in the country they're distributed, and you can see how many individuals they are. The way we get these numbers is through records and sightings. And there are also set inventories and set assessments for lynx and wolf, particularly, also Wolverine, in the wintertime, because when the snow comes, we can see the tracks easier. So there are trackings happening at the moment, looking for and counting lynx and wolf in all the counties of Sweden. And this is then submitted into family groups. You say how many family groups there are. And there is a constant which is used to define how many individuals are in a family group. But it appears, looking at the numbers, that this varies between counties. So it's a bit complicated to point out. So we have here the number of individuals. But if you look for information, you'll tend to find it in family groups. And I find that that's a little less accurate if you're looking at nationwide. You might think, 3,000 bears, that's a good number of bears. That is a good number of bears. 1,250 lynx, that's fair, that's okay. 300 to 400 wolves, it's the smallest number on the board. And for being the only predator that can control moose, maybe you can see a problem there if we go back to the landscape of fear and the predator effect on prey populations from the first slide. Because the wolves are hunted. In fact, all of these animals are hunted. There were 2 bears shot just north of Gävle in August, according to the record sheet. So these things are hunted under controlled licensed hunts, but they are also poached. People who are against these animals for whatever reason, be it for livestock, be it for personal safety, be it for trophy hunting, it doesn't matter what they're for. There is a lot of poaching happening on these animals, which kind of ruins what I was pointing out for this next slide. What are the risks? Well, first we have the hunter. Human and man interactions. Second one, traffic. There's a huge amount of road traffic accidents that involve yearling animals. Animals who have been bred, stayed with their parents for a while, and then have migrated away from their parents, who are moving away from home for the first time. Maybe they haven't encountered roads before, or maybe they come to a new area. Road traffic accidents cause a lot of death. And of course, the third point is habitat loss, wherever it is. And not just habitat loss, but also urbanization, which splits habitat. Fragmentation, we call it, habitat fragmentation, where basically there's a nice big forest here. Okay, now there's a small forest there and a small forest there with no way to get between them. Note, the small forest isn't good enough to hold a population. The big forest was. Now that it's split, it's not good enough. So that becomes a big risk. And of course, these guys, they have to eat a lot of food. And the food has to survive. So they need to have a lot of food in the area for everyone to survive and to be found and for the interactions to work properly. But you can't do that if you don't have enough space. So habitat loss and habitat fragmentation cause the big problems. Going to quickly rattle through this bit. Interactions with predators. It is possible, and I have mentioned it a couple times during this talk, tracking. So all of these are my photos. I will confess the photos before weren't mine, but you can find the reference list and the quotes list of whose they are at the end. I'll make it available. All of these photos are mine of tracking events I have done this winter, 3 weeks ago and even this weekend just gone. So looking for wolves and lynx in uplands. You are able to go and find groups who will take you tracking. We'll be going through them at the end of the presentation, the last slide, who can take you tracking. Because it is worth going with someone who knows what they're doing, knows what they're looking at, because as I said, telling the difference between a dog and a wolf is almost impossible until you find multiple items of conclusive information. I also have a story about tracking. If anyone does go tracking, there is a very important rule to remember. When you find animal tracks going in a direction, assess which way the animal went and walk the other way. Very specific story. I was tracking with bear tracking in Sweden 3 years ago with a friend who is a very experienced tracker, who's a very good tracker. And he told us that his friend had found some bear tracks and he looked at them and went, they're 3 days old. Great, no problems, no risk. He found them in the snow. He followed the bear tracks and he found a place where the bear had been sleeping. He found somewhere where it had been eating. Great. 45 minutes later, the tracks stopped. And then he heard a growl and a grumble and a snap, because that bear that he found the tracks in the snow of 45 minutes earlier, which he thought was 3 days old, was starting to hibernate. He had followed this 3-day-old bear for 45 minutes and found the hibernation site. And at that point, he's woken a bear up. And obviously bear's not happy. Now, he's perfectly fine. And of course, this story is to tell you to be careful. When you find tracks, go the opposite direction. The story is the interesting bit. You want to find where they've been sleeping, where they've been eating, what they've been doing. That's what you want to find. And obviously be respectful. But when you're out tracking, you're looking for, so images we got here, we've got prey remains. That's a moose jaw, which we found from a wolf kill. We've got wolf tracks, we've got lynx tracks, we've got wolf tracks, and we've got wolf and fox poo. The one with the knife in, the dark stuff is fox, the light stuff is wolf. Foxes will follow lynx and wolves because they want to find food. If you're going to follow someone who provides, who kills big things and you can eat as well. It does mean the fox potentially becomes food. So you've got to be careful about how close, again, you follow behind a predator. But that is the end of the first section. So we are now going to take some questions, if anyone has any. If Danny will read them out. And we're going to try and answer some questions. And then we'll move on with the next bit.
All right. So we'll start with a question here from Karin Lindström, who has a question about wolves.
Yes.
Do they hunt moose and other animals at night?
Hello, Karin. A good question. So when we define something as nocturnal, they tend to be active at the night. So the primary activity at the night is they're going around their territory, marking the edges and making sure no one else is breaking into their territory. The hunting aspect tends to be more in the dawn and the dusk, the crepuscular period, when the other animals are active. Wolves don't sneak up on sleeping mooses. So no, the hunting, you're absolutely right to ask, is more dawn and dusk, whereas the nighttime is the territory marking and they're sort of protecting their area. Good question. Thank you for that. Wonderful. Well, guys, don't forget, if you have questions, you may put them in the comment box, but it appears that we have the one question for the time being. So we're going to rattle on nice and quickly. Maybe we can get through this in a good time. So,